Your silence is killing them faster than your words ever could. They've been waiting, watching the door, refreshing the feed, checking the comments, looking for the explosion they planted in your chest to finally detonate across their screens. They want the meltdown. They need the breakdown. They've already written the script in their heads, where you lose your composure, where you crack open like cheap porcelain, where every wound they inflicted comes pouring out in capital letters and exclamation points. They've imagined your rage so vividly they can taste it. They've rehearsed their responses. They've prepared their screenshots, but you didn't give them the show. And now they're the ones who can't sleep. You need to understand something fundamental about the architecture of human cruelty. When someone attacks you, when they orchestrate your humiliation, when they twist the knife with surgical precision, they're not just trying to hurt you, they're trying to create a specific reaction, a predictable pattern, an explosion they can point to and say, "See? I knew they were unstable. I knew they were weak. I knew they couldn't handle it." Your rage would have been their vindication. Your anger would have been their proof. Your loss of control would have been their trophy mounted on the wall of their mediocre existence. But you gave them nothing. You gave them silence. You gave them calm. You gave them the one thing their psychology wasn't designed to process. And it's destroying them from the inside out. Right now, in this exact moment, there are people who cannot function because you refuse to react. They're sitting in rooms that feel smaller every day, replaying conversations that didn't happen, analyzing your silence like it's an encrypted message they can't decode. They thought they knew you. They thought they had mapped every pressure point, every trigger, every button that would make you dance like a puppet on strings they controlled. They studied you. They prepared. They struck at what they believed was your weakest moment, and you looked at them like they were background noise. Do you understand the psychological devastation of that? Do you comprehend what happens to someone's sense of self when their most calculated attack produces nothing but your continued existence, unbothered and ascending? They didn't just fail to hurt you. They failed to even reach you. And that failure is eating them alive in ways your anger never could. Because here's what they didn't calculate. Rage is a response that confirms their importance. Anger means they mattered enough to disrupt you. Even hatred acknowledges their existence as significant enough to generate emotion. But calm? Calm is the ultimate dismissal. Calm says you're not even worth the energy it would take to be upset. Calm says they're so far beneath your current altitude that their attacks arrive at your feet like pebbles thrown at a passenger jet at cruising altitude. They wanted to be your villain. You made them irrelevant instead, and irrelevance is a death sentence to people who derive their entire sense of power from their ability to affect others. You moving through your days now with a kind of gravitational pull they can't explain. Meetings, decisions, projects, connections. Your life is unfolding in real time while they're frozen in the moment they thought they'd broken you. They're checking your profiles not because they want to see you fail, but because they need to understand how you're succeeding, how you're thriving, how you're building empires on ground they thought they'd salted. Every post, every update, every glimpse of your progress is another laceration to their sense of reality. Because you were supposed to be destroyed. You were supposed to be the cautionary tale they told at dinner parties, the example they used to feel better about their own stagnation. The proof that people who threaten them can be eliminated with the right combination of cruelty and precision. But you're not destroyed. You're not even damaged in ways that show. You're moving forward with the kind of momentum that suggests their attack was nothing more than weather you walked through. And that's the thing they can't survive. Not your anger, your indifference. Let's talk about what's happening in their psychology right now, because this is important. This is the mechanism by which your calm becomes their torture. When they struck at you, they created an expectation in their own minds, a narrative that required your cooperation to complete. They needed you to rage so they could play victim. They needed you to attack back so they could justify their initial aggression. They needed you to spiral so they could position themselves as the stable ones, the reasonable ones, the ones who were right about you all along. Your reaction was supposed to be the second act of a play they'd already written, but you didn't perform. You didn't even audition. You walked off their stage entirely and built your own theater. So now they're stuck, trapped in Act 1 of a story that has no resolution. Their minds are trying to close a loop that you refuse to complete. And the human brain doesn't handle open loops well. It creates anxiety. Obsession, a compulsive need to check and recheck and refresh and search for any sign that the narrative can still be salvaged. They're addicted to monitoring you now, not because they want to, but because their psychology demands closure on the attack they launched. And every day you remain calm is another day they don't get it. You know what's particularly devastating about this? They can't even talk about it. They can't go to their friends and say, I tried to destroy this person and they just didn't care. Because admitting that admits they failed. Admitting that admits you have a kind of power they don't understand. So they're suffering in silence, in private, in the gaps between the fake smiles and the performative confidence. They're drowning in questions they can't ask and fears they can't name. What if I never mattered to them at all? What if I'm not the threat I thought I was? What if they're operating on a level I can't even perceive? These questions are termites in the foundation of their ego, and you didn't even have to speak them aloud. Your silence speaks them every single day. Here's what you need to internalize, what you need to let sink into your bones until it becomes part of your cellular structure. Your calm is not weakness. Your calm is not avoidance. Your calm is not the result of being too hurt to respond. Your calm is the most sophisticated form of dominance that exists in human interaction, because anyone can rage. Rage is easy. Rage is primal. Rage is what happens when someone successfully pushes your buttons, when they prove they have access to your internal control panel. But calm? Calm requires something they don't possess. Calm requires a kind of self-possession that comes from knowing who you are, at a level that external attacks can't reach. Calm requires confidence so deep, it doesn't need to defend itself. Calm requires an understanding of your own value that their opinions can't diminish. Your calm is proof of evolution they haven't achieved, and they know it. On some level, even if they can't articulate it, even if they'd never admit it, they know it. That's why your silence haunts them. That's why your continued success feels like a personal attack. That's why they can't stop checking on you, even though every time they do it confirms their own irrelevance. You've become a living mirror, reflecting back their own inadequacy, and they can't break the mirror without proving it right. Watch what happens over the coming weeks and months. Watch how they start to unravel in ways that have nothing to do with you actively doing anything to them. They'll make mistakes, desperate mistakes. They'll reach out through mutual friends, through cryptic posts, through manufactured situations designed to force an interaction. Because they need something from you. They need anger or acknowledgement or any proof that they still have the power to affect your internal state. Don't give it to them. Every time they try to bait you, every time they manufacture drama, every time they create a situation designed to pull you back into their gravity, respond with the same thing that's been destroying them all along: nothing. Not silence as a strategy. Not silence as revenge. But silence as the natural result of being genuinely unbothered by people who don't matter. There's a difference. They can sense the difference. Calculated silence still gives them importance. It still means they're in your head, even if you're not showing it. But genuine indifference, that's the void they can't fill. That's the absence that confirms their nightmare. You've moved so far past them that they're not even an afterthought. They're just gone from your reality. And in their place, in the space they used to occupy in your mind, you've built something they can't comprehend. You've built businesses, relationships, skills, networks, internal fortresses of self-knowledge and capability. You've used the time they wasted obsessing over you to become someone they can't even recognize anymore. Someone operating at frequencies they can't hear. Someone playing games they don't know exist. You're in rooms now that they'll never access. having conversations that would sound like foreign languages to them, making moves that create ripples in industries and communities while they're still rippling in the same stagnant pond they've always occupied. Your calm didn't just protect you from their attack. Your calm created the space for you to ascend while they remained exactly where they were, frozen in the moment they thought they'd won. This is what ambitious people understand, that average people don't. The fight itself is beneath you. Engaging is descending. The moment you step into the arena with someone who attacked you, you've already lost something precious. You've lost time. You've lost energy. You've lost the momentum of your own trajectory, because while you're down there fighting, you're not up here building. And building is always the better revenge than breaking. Let them break themselves against your indifference. Let them exhaust themselves, creating scenarios that you're not even aware of. Let them spend their nights constructing elaborate fantasies about confrontations that will never happen, because you've already moved past the timeline where they existed as relevant to your story. You're not ignoring them as an act of revenge. You're genuinely building something so consuming, so demanding, so magnificent, that there's simply no bandwidth left for their manufactured drama. They're not even being actively excluded. They're just not part of the equation anymore. Not because you decided to remove them, but because the equation evolved past their level of mathematics. That's the thing that's eating them alive. Not that you hate them, not that you're plotting against them, but that you've transcended the entire framework in which they exist. You're playing a different game now, one where their rules don't apply, one where their attacks don't register, one where their very existence is so far removed from your daily reality that acknowledging them would require a conscious effort to descend to a frequency you've evolved past. This is what elite-level psychology looks like. This is what mastery of self looks like. This is what happens when you understand that the best way to defeat an enemy is to make them irrelevant by becoming unreachable. And here's the beautiful, terrible truth. They're discovering right now, there's no countermove to this. There's no strategy that defeats genuine indifference. They can't out-calm your calm. They can't ignore you better than you're not even noticing them. They can't win a game where you're not playing. All they can do is watch and wonder and slowly lose their minds, trying to understand how someone they thought they destroyed is not only intact but thriving in ways that make their attack look like a child throwing sand at a skyscraper. You need to understand the full scope of what's happening in their internal world right now. Because it's not just frustration, it's not just confusion, it's a complete collapse of their understanding of how power works. They believed in a certain equation: attack plus vulnerability equals control. They thought they'd found your vulnerability. They thought they'd calculated exactly how much force would be required to shatter you. They thought they understood the mechanics of destruction. And when they struck with confidence. They struck with certainty. They struck expecting specific results, and they got nothing. That nothing is rewriting their entire understanding of reality. Because if you didn't break when you should have, if you didn't rage when any normal person would have, if you didn't collapse when the pressure was designed specifically to collapse you, then what does that mean about you? What does that mean about them? What does that mean about every assumption they've built their sense of self upon? It means you're not what they thought you were. It means they're not as perceptive as they believed. It means they're operating with incomplete information about the nature of strength itself. And that realization is tearing them apart, because they've staked their identity on being the kind of person who can read others, who can find weaknesses, who can execute attacks with surgical precision. They've built their confidence on a foundation of successful manipulations, of people who danced when they pulled strings, of targets who reacted exactly as predicted. They're not used to missing. They're not prepared for encounters with people who exist outside their framework of understanding. You're a glitch in their matrix, an error their code can't process. And instead of updating their understanding, they're trying harder with the same broken tools, expecting different results, descending into a madness of their own creation. Watch them start to make it about themselves. Watch how your silence becomes evidence of their theories. They're too hurt to respond. They're intimidated. They know I'm right. They'll create elaborate justifications for why your calm actually proves they won, why your continued success is actually a mask hiding the pain they caused, why your indifference is actually evidence of how deeply they wounded you. These are the lies people tell themselves when reality contradicts their narrative. These are the coping mechanisms of those who can't accept that they didn't matter enough to generate the reaction they needed. Let them have those lies. Those lies are their prison now. Because every story they tell themselves about why you're not reacting is another bar on the cage they're building around their own perception. They're so busy explaining away your calm that they're missing the truth. Screaming underneath it, you're simply better than them, more evolved, more focused, more complete. And that truth is available to them at any moment. All they have to do is stop creating stories and look at the evidence. But they won't, because looking at the evidence means confronting their own mediocrity. It means admitting that the person they tried to break is actually made of materials they don't possess. It means accepting that they operated from a position of weakness disguised as strength, while you operated from a position of strength that didn't need to be proven. That's an unbearable truth for ego-driven people. So, they'll avoid it. They'll create alternative explanations. They'll build elaborate fantasies. And every fantasy will take them further from reality, further from growth, further from any chance of becoming the kind of person who could actually threaten you. Meanwhile, you're doing something they can't even conceive of. You're transmuting the entire experience into fuel. Not in the revenge sense, not in the I'll show them sense, but in the alchemical sense. You're taking what they meant as poison and converting it into something that propels you forward. Their attack isn't weighing you down. It's not even a chip on your shoulder. It's been metabolized into a deeper understanding of human nature, a clearer view of who deserves your energy, a more refined filter for who gets access to your internal world. They thought they were giving you trauma. You took it as tuition. Expensive tuition in a course called How to Identify and Exclude Toxic Forces Before They Get Close Enough to Matter. And you learn the lesson so well that they can't even get close enough to see the diploma. This is the level you're operating on now. This is the altitude where air gets thin and most people can't breathe. You're not just surviving their attack. You're using it as a foundation to build something they'll never understand. Something they'll watch from a distance, confused about how someone they tried to bury is somehow thriving in soil they thought they'd poisoned. Here's what you need to remember on the days when it gets harder, when the silence feels heavier, when some part of you wonders if responding would feel better. It wouldn't. Responding would feel like relief for about 30 seconds, and then it would feel like descent. Because the moment you engage, you're confirming that they still have access. The moment you react, you're teaching them that the right combination of provocations can still reach you. The moment you break silence, you're giving them exactly what they've been desperately craving. Don't give them that gift. Don't let them taste your attention ever again. Because attention is the currency of this era. It's more valuable than money, more powerful than force. And you've cut off their supply completely. You've created an economy where they're bankrupt and you're building wealth they can't even measure. Every day they spend thinking about you is a day of your attention they don't get. Every hour they waste monitoring your life is an hour of your energy they can't access. You've created the ultimate asymmetric warfare. They're spending everything on you, and you're spending nothing on them. That's not balance. That's domination disguised as indifference. And the most beautiful part? You're not even doing it to them. You're doing it for you. The fact that it destroys them is just a side effect of you choosing yourself, of you prioritizing your own growth, of you refusing to let anyone else's dysfunction become your problem. You're not calm to hurt them. You're calm because you've built a life so aligned with your values that their chaos can't find purchase. You're calm because you've become unshakable, not through force, through foundation. They tried to crack you and discovered you built on bedrock they can't even see. They tried to flood you and discovered you're at an elevation where their water can't reach. They tried to burn you and discovered you're made of materials that don't combust at the temperatures they can generate. You're not just surviving their attack. You're proving it was never capable of threatening you in the first place. And that proof is running on a loop in their subconscious every single day, every single night, every time they see your name, every time they hear about your progress. Every time someone mentions you in a context that has nothing to do with them, they're reminded you moved on, you evolved, you transcended. You became someone they can't reach anymore. Not because you're hiding, but because you're at a height they can't climb to. This is what happens when you choose calm over chaos, when you choose building over battling, when you choose your own trajectory over anyone else's drama. You don't just survive, you become untouchable. Not through defense, through ascension. Let them rage at the distance. Let them scream into the void. Let them create elaborate scenarios in their heads where they matter to you. None of it changes the fundamental truth that's destroying them. You don't need their validation. You don't need their understanding. You don't need their acknowledgement or their apology or their anything. You just need to keep building, keep ascending, keep moving forward with the kind of focused intensity that makes their attacks look like mosquitoes hitting a windshield at highway speed. Noticed for a fraction of a second, then gone, leaving no mark, changing nothing about the direction or speed of your travel. You're not running from them. You're not hiding from them. You're just going somewhere they can't follow. And that's the most complete form of victory that exists. Because here's the final truth they're discovering in the silence. They needed you to engage more than you needed to respond. They needed your anger to validate their attack. They needed your pain to justify their cruelty. They needed your reaction to complete their story. But you don't need anything from them. Not closure, not revenge, not even the satisfaction of seeing them suffer, because you found something they'll never understand. Peace that exists independent of their chaos. Success that exists regardless of their failure. Happiness that doesn't require their misery to taste sweet. You've become self-sustaining, self-validating, self-complete, and they're still waiting for you to need them, still waiting for you to care, still waiting for any sign that they mattered enough to generate emotion. They'll be waiting forever because you've already moved into a reality where they're not even part of the background noise, where their entire existence is irrelevant to your daily experience, where the space they used to occupy in your mind has been renovated into something useful, something productive, something that serves your future instead of anchoring you to their past. This is the end game of choosing calm. This is what happens when you refuse to play on their terms. This is the natural consequence of being so focused on your own excellence that you don't have bandwidth left for their mediocrity. They wanted to be your downfall. They became your background, scenery you passed on the way to destinations they'll never see. Context. You forgot the moment you stepped into the next room. And that forgetting, that genuine moving on, that authentic indifference, it's the one thing their psychology can't survive. So let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them waste their lives trying to understand how you're thriving in the ruins they thought they'd created. You're not going to explain it to them. You're not going to teach them. You're not going to give them any insight into the mechanisms of your peace. You're just going to keep being calm. Keep being focused. Keep being untouchable. And that calm will destroy them more thoroughly than your rage ever could. Because your rage would have given them a fight. Your calm gives them nothing but the slow, creeping realization that they never mattered in the first place. And that realization will follow them for the rest of their lives, every time they see evidence of your success. Every time they hear your name, every time they're reminded that the person they tried to break didn't just survive, they thrived, not despite the attack, but so far beyond it that it doesn't even register as a footnote in the story of who you've become. That's the power of calm. That's the weapon they never saw coming. That's the victory they'll never understand. And you don't need them to understand it. You just need to keep living it, keep building it, keep being it. The rest takes care of itself. Their collapse, their obsession, their slow descent into irrelevance. All of it happens automatically when you choose to be calm in a world that expects you to rage. So stay calm, stay focused, Stay ascending, and watch what happens when you refuse to give them the one thing they can't survive without: your attention, your anger, your proof that they still matter. Watch them fade. Watch them fracture. Watch them fail to understand how someone they tried to destroy became someone they can't even touch. That's not revenge. That's evolution. And evolution doesn't need to announce itself. It just happens, naturally, inevitably. While they're stuck explaining why you didn't react, you're already 10 levels above where they can see, and you're never coming back down.